We have that. That's happened with us in houses. Like we have a lot of people that came here, like 500,000 immigrants, and I'm okay with that. So many people I know come from immigrant families here, but that amount, there's an amount. And like, I feel like Canada's going through it and has been going through it. Houses are so expensive. Cities in Canada are like, to live are way more expensive than cities in the US, and our salaries are way lower because of the dollar. So it's all broken and fucked up. And it's really just, we have so many people that need houses, so many people that own houses that don't live in this country. Like we have people that are like born and raised in China that probably maybe even never set foot in Canada, and they own like a huge condo building.
It's fucked up.
How is that?
I have a housing question. So in America, like let's say people want to live in Atlanta, but Atlanta's expensive. So the suburbs just spread and spread and spread. And if you're willing to tolerate like a 90-minute commute, your home is much less expensive. I never hear that in Canada. I hear this city's crazy expensive. I have to commute 50 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes. Instead, they just say, I can't buy. Do you guys not have sprawling suburbs that impact the supply and demand?
We do. We like more often than not, I've lived in places like that are like 30 to 50 minutes to the city. When you get to a place like Toronto, the city isn't just like one place. There's like many cities that make up the greater area of that place. Like when you say Toronto, a lot of people are including multiple boroughs and places that are around Toronto that really could be 40 minutes from one to the other, but are all kind
That's
of
how
close.
Atlanta is. Atlanta's the city of suburbs.
Yeah, like LA's like that also. You know what I mean? You're like, you could be in one place, downtown LA or Hollywood, and they're different places that are all connected. But no, like I looked in Canada, I went and for what I wanted space wise for a house, like I went and I'm looking forward, and I'm in a place where if I look at my Facebook towns, like drama, it's people who own horses that horseback ride through the park, and then people who have kids that play at the park and there's like horse shit at the park. So it's like, oh, like pick up your horse shit. And you're like, no, this horses have been shitting here for a long. Go back to the city, motherfucker. And I live like at a perfect, like that line. That's where I live. And I'm like an hour away from the city, but I don't really ever go there necessarily. But houses are fucked up here. They're so expensive. Like in my area, like I've been.
Did you say where you were? I don't mean to dox you.
No, I'm outside of Montreal.
Okay.
And like, so I'll be like, down by, like it's like 5 a.m. and I'm going home, and, I see there's this yellow bus that pulls up at near the street, like a corner of the street nearby my house. And, like mad Indian dudes come out of their houses and they hop on the bus, and some of them are dressed like a line cook or whatever. And, talking to people around, like they end up working at farms nearby. Some of them get on the city bus and go, and they're working at a restaurant. And what I think about it is I'm like, damn, like, I hope, like, I know about, immigrant parents, they came here for a better life and they worked really hard so their kids could have more than them. Like, I understand that. But this time I'm looking at this and I'm like, what were they sold? Because coming down here where I live, it's freezing cold. And if you're doing something outside, like to get a good, like you got to get something that's like minus 30 degrees built. If you're doing something outside, and like jeans won't cut it. Like these are like layers, and they're not cheap clothing to really be doing. It's like a very hard, uncomfortable, and like it's colder now than like it's ever been. And it's just, I'm like, what were they sold? Because some of these people, they live like,
it sounds like the beginning of an apocalypse novel.
There's 3 families,
and it's so much colder now.
It feels
and
like
the day is so much shorter.
It's not in a zombie way, but it is.
Yeah, I get like, I think about it like how hard it is. I'm like, they'll have like 3 or 4 families in a house. Like I'll see like a garage is fashioned into it, like a second kitchen, or like someone is like, the garage opens up and I see it's like a room for a couple people. So I'm just like, damn, like what were they told? Like it's hard to get a house here. And so like, that's really rough for them. But then I find out Canada's talking about people who did buy property and who maybe manage a couple of rental locations Canada wants to take those places and give them to immigrant families that are coming in.
They need somewhere to go.
And right, they do, and that's true. But this guy also
bought it's called India.
And now this guy bought these.
They can go to India.
Do you know what they're doing with guns? So they're taking everyone's guns. Like my buddy has guns, and you got to notice about which ones they're taking. And they give like a generous price. Like you had a gun that was $800, and they're giving $1,000. Cool. That's my
Canada
money.
is such a gay country.
That's me buying his gun, and his gun is going to Ukraine. And like all these guys, like they want to put little tags on their guns just so they're like we can see where it goes for fun. But like really, like it's just
That's smart. You'll find them in Mexican cartel hands.
We're paying for the guns.
That's what we did
to be bought and then get sent out there. And like you know what, a lot of times like people used to be like the first Trump election, people used to be like, oh, can I move to Canada? And now like sometimes some people reference that, and I'm like, no one's saying that, dude. No one's saying that.
Nobody wants to move to Canada. You guys are in a tailspin.
I go to Texas. I go to Florida. Like I see Canadians that have left and go down to the U.S. and no one is saying, "Oh, I got to move to Canada." That's not it anymore. And you know what? It's sad. It used to be that to an extent. It did actually be. It was actually true. But the country's in such a crazy place that a lot of people I know that would have always voted liberal are just like, they want the next person in, and this guy Pierre Poilievre is just such a personality, like fully out of like the Trump playbook, like doing everything that is so blatantly the Trump playbook, and you just know he's going to get in. He has like 2 million followers.
You think it will work?
Yeah, it has been working, but he's not a type of guy that I would have ever voted for in my life.
It will work because when people of a nation start to feel displaced, they will turn towards more nationalist ideologies where they think, hey, let's take care of our own citizens before we take care of foreigners being imported here by large capital firms that seek to lower their own overhead costs via their importation. So they capitalize the gains of those lower payments, and then they socialize the costs via government programs. And so this is a totally natural swing.
When we buy a house now, apparently, and like, you know, I mean, this is me listening to the guy who's running for the Conservative Party of Canada, which isn't the guy I would have ever voted for.
By the way, I listen to the guy a lot too, and I like him.
Yeah, he's good at it. But he was like saying that like, like when you buy a house in Canada, if you bought a house for $1 million, $300,000 of that is going to the bureaucracy, the bullshit bureaucracy of the house being made. And way less is going to the guy who like actually is building the house, the people that are like doing
100%.
So you're paying like, this extra bit for
a third in bureaucracy, huh?
It's more than that here though. Like if you look at Joe Rogan was telling this story about they wanted to install a public bathroom in San Francisco. Like they had this problem in San Francisco. It's the shit capital of the world because the hobos shit on the streets everywhere. And they were like, we're going to install a wonderful public bathroom right here in the shit capital. And they were like, okay, it's going to cost, it was either 1.5 or $2.5 million for a toilet inside a little shed, basically on the street. Mm-hmm. And they were like, that's crazy. And this company was like, we'll come to your rescue. Don't worry. It's on us. We're going to install it. We'll supply the thing. We don't like the shit problem either. And, you know, just let us put it in. They're like, actually, 1.2 million was bureaucracy. 300,000 was for labor and materials. Like, why would you think a bathroom would cost millions of dollars?
I think San Francisco is like that on purpose. Because, like, I bet whoever lives nearby is like, I don't actually want the homeless toilet in my neighborhood. I want it somewhere else. And that, like, overhead is designed to keep it out.
It's there whether they like it or not.
Yeah. Okay, so the housing thing. Back in the 90s, I said all the same things that the young people say now. Like, oh my gosh, homes are so expensive. I have to buy this home for like $187,000. That's what it cost. And my coworkers who are 40, they bought their houses for, 2 apples and a tomato. Like, oh my God, it'd be so nice. Imagine the like fiscal leap forward I would have if my mortgage was low like theirs. So when I hear them saying it now, sometimes I view it through that same lens. Like, kids, we all went through that. But then I look at the prices. And I'm like, this actually is different.
It's wild.
This is not the same. This isn't like, sure, salaries have gone up since the 90s by what, 50%, 2/3? I don't know. But home prices have like quadrupled. Like it is a lot harder to get into a home now than it once was.
Yeah.
And I feel for the people who didn't buy it already. You know, like if you're 30 and you didn't buy a house, like, that blows. Sorry
it's a shitty situation. Like I know people, like friends of mine who have good jobs, like they're not making buku bucks or anything crazy, but like they make enough money that if they were transplanted into a similar job with, you know, ratio corrected wages into the 1950s, they would be buying houses. But now they can't. And so the thought of buying a house is an impossibility. And then even if they get the capital to buy a house at this juncture, like right currently, it's like, oh, you get a 6.25% rate. That's crazy. That's really difficult at these prices. You know, they say back in the day, they're like, well, the rates used to be super high on my $40,000 3-bedroom 2-bath house. And it's like, yeah, no shit, retard. Like it's changed a lot since then. And so a huge part of it is that both the US and Canada have been importing millions of people for years.
So many,
and they've been doing this shit where
so many people,
these large capital firms, whether it's Musk owned, he's a big,
that's so weird.
Contributor to this, so where weird. They bring them in, they pay them less than market wages for any American, and then that same person also, because of our new laws, qualifies for benefits as an illegal. And so they're just totally doing that shit where they're privatizing all the profits by paying less for their wage force, and then socializing the costs across all the people who don't work in their industry. Who pays for the housing vouchers for that person who's now working and living 9 people to an apartment in Toronto? It's people who live in Toronto who pay for that. It's not those big fucking tech firms. It's absurd what we are asking young people to live in right now. It's an absurd situation, and there is too much of a blasé dismissal of it. Of it was tough for me too as a kid, and it's like, no, that's not what's happening. These people have skills to get into fields, and they are passed over for H-1B visa workers who will do it for a slave wage. And then what happens? Does that H-1B visa worker use all that money here in the US? Or do we see through stats that a large percentage rather of that gets sent back in remittances, which we're losing that money now, whether it's an illegal, cutting a yard or it's an Indian working at Twitter, huge amount of remittances. That's a negative. And then you also have the fact that like now we have like born and bred Americans who cannot get jobs in fields they are totally qualified to enter, but can't.
Expand on what you said. Sending money back home is part of the Indian culture. And like I kind of see the morality in it. Like, that your parents raised you, now you're in America, now you're making money. Like I can see why they would feel like that's the right thing to do. But as an American giving you this opportunity, it feels bad for you not to be putting that money back in our economy where you earned it, to just send it home to India. It's like, right. It's a reminder that like we're not on the same team.
Yeah. And it makes me feel as an American that a lot of these people showing up don't want to be Americans. They don't see us as our own independent country. They see us as an economy or a resource to be used.
Why not make it harder to send the money back home then? And why not tax?
I said this like a month ago, 100% tax on remittances.